The film opens with police responding to a fisherman's report of gunshots. Upon arrival, they find no body, only a seemingly expensive suitcase. The suitcase's significance remains a mystery. In-jae, the female lead, is in the hospital after hearing her dying husband's final words. Thanks to her, he'd lived a happy life. While others grieve, In-jae shows no emotion. She gives the doctor her business card to contact the husband's guardian, revealing they divorced just 10 minutes prior. Before the doctor can react, she goes to the restroom, washes away something from her hands, leaves her wedding ring, and departs. The next morning, In-jae goes boating and announces her upcoming marriage via phone. As vice president of her company, she rushes to work to sign off on a project completion report, simultaneously accepting information about her new husband. He's not quite the right fit, and this marriage differs from her previous arrangements. She learns his name is Han Jeong-won, a fabulously wealthy music producer. Meanwhile, Jeong-won hides in a nightclub restroom, overhearing gossip about himself. Ignoring it, he takes and consumes a large quantity of pills. In his drug-induced haze, a ceiling light seems to loom over him menacingly. He wakes up at home, inexplicably. He tries to call his wife, Lee Seo-yeon, but fails. His manager then calls, berating him for his nightly nightclub escapades and pill popping, adding that everyone thinks he's an addict. He dismisses it as old news and suggests a doctor's visit. He's been visiting one for over 20 years for sleeping pills and needs a refill. He notices his home's ceiling light resembles the one from his hallucination, so he checks it. His wife then calls, and he asks her to replace it. He finds it unsettling. Seo-yeon refuses, deeming it an artistic masterpiece and a cherished possession of her father's. This only increases Jeong-won's dislike. She insists it can't be replaced until a suitable alternative is found. Jeong-won impulsively chooses a luxury car and drives to work, unknowingly passing In-jae. In-jae somehow enters Jeong-won's house, undresses, showers, and puts on a new ring. Jeong-won arrives at the office to find police waiting. They need a urine sample because someone at the nightclub was caught with drugs. Jeong-won is baffled by the thorough investigation. The officer suspects money laundering from stock sales, implying Jeong-won has idle money and a criminal record. Jeong-won questions a juvenile offense being considered a criminal record, but the officer counters that he was 17 and knew right from wrong. Enraged, Jeong-won assaults an employee in his office. Director Oh intervenes and suggests Jeong-won buy out the company shares and take over management, given his 90% stake compared to Hyun Cheol's 0.5%. Jeong-won, however, is apathetic and wants Director Oh to handle everything. He retracts his earlier insult calling his wife a bitch, yet Seo-yeon unexpectedly kicks him. Director Oh implores Jeong-won to reconcile with his wife, urging him to leave his destructive ways and live happily ever after. Seo-yeon confides in a subordinate about her remarriage to a younger man. Suddenly, Jeong-won calls, inviting her to dinner. He waits at the restaurant, and Seo-yeon arrives, but she's cold and distant. They haven't seen each other daily not because of their divorce, but because of her remarriage, and his as well. Jeong-won is disappointed, but still gives her a pair of earrings. He doesn't understand why Seo-yeon arranged this temporary marriage. He can't live without her. They've known each other since kindergarten. He gave up studying abroad to be with her. Without her, he feels he'd collapse. Seo-yeon retorts that he's never actually tried living without her, and if he can't accept this temporary marriage, their relationship is over. Just then, her new husband calls, and she leaves Jeong-won before they can eat. Unable to bear this, Jeong-won follows her. He finds his gift discarded in her car. Enraged, he calls her, unaware that she and her new husband are intimate and ignore the phone. He angrily smashes her car window, and patrolling police arrive. At the station, he's in trouble for lacking residency documents, and her car's owner is unreachable. In-jae unexpectedly appears to bail out her husband. The police then receive a call from the car owner, and Jeong-won is released. He stares at his new wife, speechless. Simultaneously, the police receive a new report. A boat owner who went out early that morning to retrieve his boat finds blood on it. A fisherman heard gunshots but mistook them for fireworks. The expensive suitcase is found near the shore. Its serial number will easily identify the buyer. Jeong-won and In-jae return home, but his car is impounded. He takes a taxi and encounters In-jae, driving his car. In the car, he notices her remarriage ring, fulfilling his wife's request and the conversation with the company employee. Back at home, In-jae has prepared dinner. She tells him she's moved her things upstairs, and he can speak up if he's uncomfortable. But he doesn't consider her his wife yet, as nothing is official. That night, Jeong-won has a nightmare. He sees his mother in the kitchen, eating things that have fallen on the floor. Then she picks up a knife and seemingly tries to attack his father. The next morning, In-jae prepares breakfast, but Jeong-won leaves without eating with her. Disappointed, In-jae returns to her small apartment and cleans. Si-jeong calls, informing her that the villain, Tae-seong, has been released. While delivering goods, In-jae sees him. She thought he'd spend his life in an asylum. Terrified, she retrieves a stun gun from her suitcase. Jeong-won visits Seo-yeon's office to thank her for helping him with the police. He offers to buy her a new car to replace the damaged one. She lifts her hair, revealing the earrings he gave her. She'd put them on earlier but forgotten the box. As they reach the elevator, Jeong-won embraces her, promising to do better and begging her to return to him. He tries to kiss her, but she stops him, wishing he were dead, then walks away. He stands stunned by her harsh words. Back home, Jeong-won finally sits down to eat with In-jae. He finds her cooking surprisingly good. In-jae says the fish alone explains the quality of the meal, mentioning she used his card to buy it. Jeong-won notes their coldness, wondering if this is some kind of expensive maid service, even questioning if she'd mind if he cheated given his strong libido. He reaches out to caress her face. In-jae accepts this if they both want it. Jeong-won hesitates, saying it will take time due to his shyness. That night, Jeong-won is restless. He hears a noise and sees In-jae watching soccer. She apologizes for waking him and, noticing his insomnia, offers him some beer. Before he can respond, she gets it. He follows, intending to clarify things, but the ceiling light triggers his fear. In-jae throws him a beer, encouraging him to relax in her presence. She insists she isn't trying to seduce him. Suddenly, Jeong-won angrily throws the beer can at the light, frightening In-jae. He picks up another can, noticing several light fixtures falling. He cringes in fear, but unharmed. In-jae, though frightened, shields him, and he notices her hand bleeding profusely from a cut caused by the falling light. Several years ago, In-jae's fiancé, Do-ha, was at his company. While texting his wife, he was preoccupied with his future father-in-law's online accusations against him. News of Do-ha's leaked explicit videos was spreading rapidly. The cause? His future father-in-law, discovering Do-ha was bisexual, wanted to prevent his daughter from entering what he considered a fraudulent marriage. After returning home, Do-ha looked at a photo of himself and his fiancée one last time before disappearing without a trace. In-jae was devastated by her fiancé's sudden abandonment. To add to her misery, she had to pay a 70% penalty for canceling the wedding. After throwing her wedding ring into the bathroom, a stranger appeared, Lee Seon, the CEO of NM. Knowing about In-jae's shattered marriage, Lee Seon offered her a job at her company. The position involved temporary marriages, a new assignment each year, a high salary equivalent to a senior manager at a large corporation, comprehensive health insurance, and bonuses. Returning to the present, the male lead Jeong-won rushed In-jae to the hospital to treat her injuries. In the lobby, Jeong-won looked at his own bloody hand, remembering In-jae shielding him. Dr. Park suddenly appeared, informing Jeong-won that his father was at the hospital and he should go see him. Jeong-won questioned the need for him to visit his father given the hospital's 24/7 medical staff and hotel-like amenities. Dr. Park curtly replied that he should only call when his father dies, as he'll need someone to manage the funeral arrangements. After treatment, they went home. Jeong-won assured In-jae he would ensure her injury wouldn't scar, adding that if the wound had been slightly off, it would have hit her head instead of her hand. In-jae commented that her husband's sudden death would severely impact her job performance within a week. To thank In-jae for saving him, Jeong-won suggested they get sandwiches as she was hungry. They stopped at a fast food restaurant. During their conversation, Jeong-won asked how many times In-jae had been married. Without hesitation, she replied 5 times. Jeong-won was surprised, wondering if marriage helped her live better. However, In-jae didn't answer directly, instead asking why he hated the living room light so much, noting his habit of turning his back to avoid looking at it. Jeong-won didn't respond and abruptly left. Back at In-jae's house, she was surprised to find it spotless. Jeong-won explained he'd asked manager Kim for help, despite the manager's dislike of strangers in his house. He assured her that there were people to care for her if needed. That night, Jeong-won tossed and turned, plagued by dreams of the light bulb that injured In-jae and recurring images of his father violently abusing his mother. The next morning, Jeong-won woke to the sound of broken dishes. He cleaned up the mess for In-jae, explaining that he usually didn't eat breakfast and had an urgent company meeting. In-jae instructed him to come home for dinner. While exploring the house, she discovered numerous medications behind a cupboard, most notably a suitcase identical to the one from the riverbank murder case. Meanwhile, Jeong-won was awakened by Director Oh, who was curious about his new wife. Jeong-won readily revealed that Seo-yeon was responsible for their marriage. He felt a surge of gratitude and concern for In-jae, acknowledging her accidental injury while protecting him. In-jae was at the supermarket, buying groceries for dinner, when her intuition told her she was being followed. After finishing her shopping, as she got into her car, a man approached an employee from NM, checking for any signs of domestic violence in Jeong-won's temporary marriage. However, she still felt the presence of another, unseen follower. Back home, she found Tae-seong waiting, causing her great anxiety about his intentions. Simultaneously, Seo-yeon, after a passionate encounter with her younger husband, went to the hospital. The doctor advised her to remove her aoud or freeze her eggs, prompting her frustration as she didn't want to get pregnant. Afterwards, Seo-yeon met Yoon-ae at a cafe, recounting how In-jae shielded Jeong-won from the expensive lamp, resulting in In-jae's severe arm injury and a late-night hospital visit. Seo-yeon speculated that In-jae's actions indicated a deep love for Jeong-won. That night, Jeong-won sat sadly in a bar, texting his ex-wife. Meanwhile, Seo-yeon, contentedly in the arms of her young husband, received Jeong-won's message expressing his longing and displeasure at In-jae's presence. She felt a surge of satisfaction, believing he couldn't forget her. Then, another message arrived, news of In-jae's injury and Jeong-won's concern for her. Seo-yeon's mood soured, and she sought immediate physical comfort with her younger husband. Jeong-won returned home to find In-jae watching a soccer game. He questioned her enjoyment of this marriage arrangement. She explained that it was initially revenge, but she'd discovered a talent for it. She then asked him about his aversion to the lamp. Reluctantly, Jeong-won revealed that his father had installed a camera in the lamp to monitor his mother. Despite her frail physique, his mother possessed surprising resilience, but eventually suffered a mental breakdown. He described the house as hell, with his father refusing to take his mother to the hospital, resulting in severe sleepwalking that required Jeong-won to stay up all night, fearing she might wander off and hurt herself or someone else. Later, while Jeong-won slept, In-jae treated the wound on his forehead. A call came from Jeong-won's ex-wife, Seo-yeon. Seo-yeon was surprised to hear In-jae answer. She informed In-jae that Jeong-won's father's condition had worsened but was past the critical stage. She added that he was heavily sedated and there was no need to wake him. In-jae explained that due to her work schedule, she hadn't had any days off recently, and that Jeong-won was already asleep, without the need for medication. Upon waking and hearing about Seo-yeon's call and his father's critical condition, Jeong-won and In-jae rushed to the hospital. Jeong-won stood before his father, wishing he would just die and end the secrecy surrounding his life. He picked up a pillow, intending to smother his father, but In-jae burst in, locking the door. He asked what she was doing. In-jae stated she was merely assisting him, pointing out that ignoring a spouse's crimes was not legally punishable. Jeong-won, speechless, returned the pillow and took In-jae out to eat. Later, Jeong-won questioned the presence of a doll next to his pillow that morning. In-jae explained it was filled with talcum powder, helping her sleep soundly, even during thunderstorms. Jeong-won thanked her, mentioning it was the first time he'd slept well in 6 months. Meanwhile, the police discovered a body near the riverbank. Seo-yeon was enjoying tea with her former professor. The professor observed that Seo-yeon wanted Jeong-won but couldn't have him, therefore arranging the temporary marriage. Suddenly, a special guest arrived, Tae-seong. Later, while driving, Seo-yeon contemplated In-jae's words and asked manager Kim to arrange a visit to In-jae's house. As In-jae poured tea for Seo-yeon, she accidentally spilled it on her guest. Seo-yeon rushed to the bathroom to clean up. While there, she opened a cupboard, discovering the medications and her past suicidal thoughts. Snapping back to reality, Seo-yeon recomposed herself and returned, but the atmosphere was tense. She suggested they drop the pretense, revealing their prior acquaintance. The female lead learns that a senior acquaintance committed suicide because of Seo-yeon. Rumor has it that suicide was the only way to escape her. She muses that someone who chooses to disappear from the world is inscrutable. Perhaps they just needed an excuse, but that doesn't mean In-jae believes Seo-yeon is inherently evil. Later, the male lead, Jeong-won, returns home. In-jae reports that Seo-yeon visited to change a light bulb, but he only focuses on her hand injury. Her follow-up appointment is next week, and she has a personal matter to attend to. She visits In-young to gather more information about her ex-husband. In-young reveals that a broker said he was in Prague, then Hungary, 15 days ago, specifically Budapest. While In-jae is checking her ex-husband's location on her phone, she accidentally hits the music player. She's surprised to discover the music is playing from a USB drive. The scene shifts to Jeong-won listening to music when he receives a text from Seo-yeon. She sends a picture of a disc along with an ultrasound image, urging him to come home that day. Jeong-won recalls his ex-wife's accident while she was pregnant with their child. He frantically takes sleeping pills to calm himself. The next morning, In-jae has her stitches removed. She sees a tense Jeong-won observing her and reassures him she's fine. In the elevator, Jeong-won's claustrophobia flares up. In-jae, aware of his condition, comforts him and suggests he focus on the numbers displayed. He follows her advice, feeling better. Jeong-won schedules a cosmetic procedure for In-jae in a month. Seo-yeon calls, but he cuts the conversation short. Back home, Jeong-won mentions that while he's seen many injured people, this is his first time seeing such a clean wound. He admits to being slightly frightened by it, but he says he can't have the stitches stuck in his head, so In-jae should feign more pain, even though he knows she's not one to exaggerate. He'll feel less worried this way. Suddenly, In-jae brings up marriage, suggesting they get married the day after tomorrow if he's free. Jeong-won is shocked. She explains that it's a procedural requirement to finalize their contract. That night, Jeong-won meets Seo-yeon. She inquires about In-jae, and he details how he's been caring for his wife. To his surprise, his description enrages Seo-yeon. She returns the disc to Jeong-won. He opens it, and the ultrasound picture of the baby falls out, along with a bag of pills. He doesn't understand her actions. Seeing Seo-yeon's silence, Jeong-won states he will do as she asked. He will marry In-jae tomorrow. The next day, Director Oh waits impatiently at the wedding hall, misinterpreting the wedding invitation as a threat. Jeong-won struggles with his bow tie until In-jae arrives to help, teasing him about possibly trying to run away. She explains that the wedding is taking place a week later than planned due to the accident. He reveals that the suit he's wearing was intended for a funeral, a fact In-jae already knows, given his wardrobe and aversion to suits, a testament to his coping mechanism regarding his father's death. After they get ready, they arrive at the wedding hall to sign a contract, a confidentiality agreement between Han Jeong-won, No In-jae, and NM. The marriage has no legal or official record. Breach of contract results in the disciplinary actions specified in the NM company document. They sign, officially becoming contractually married under NM. Back home, Jeong-won finds In-jae watching a soccer game and invites her to have a beer. He questions her past, but she's bound by the contract's rules to remain silent. He offers some words of comfort and wishes her good night. It's their first official wedding night. Alone in their room, Jeong-won examines a sonogram and the pill Seo-yeon gave him. He falls into a nightmare, drowning and struggling, waking up in a panic. He reaches for Seo-yeon's pills. After regaining composure, he goes to the bathroom, retrieves sleeping pills from a cabinet, and takes them. He drifts off, yet hears In-jae's voice, lulling him into a peaceful sleep. The next morning, In-jae notices his hesitancy. She preemptively assures him that if he's wondering if she was there last night, the answer is yes. Jeong-won nearly chokes on his food, but In-jae reminds him that sleeping together after the wedding is standard practice, except under specific circumstances such as class 1, 2, or 3 communicable diseases according to government regulations. Jeong-won feels his life is falling apart, urging In-jae to ask Seo-yeon what she wants from him. He pleads for a quiet year, questioning the difficulty of this situation. Seeing his distress, In-jae considers ways to make sleeping together easier. Without a word, Jeong-won leaves in his car. He tries to play music to relax, only to find In-jae has replaced his USB drive with recordings of intimate sounds. At home, the female lead is examining and photographing her husband's medication, suspecting a discrepancy between the contents and the label. Meanwhile, the police are still struggling to find the murderer, their extensive investigation yielding no results. Fingerprints are inconclusive due to prolonged submersion in water. The detective is frustrated. The crime scene is meticulously clean, almost as if it were staged. A phone call then brings news that they've identified the owner of the suitcase. After Seo-yeon installs new light fixtures at the house, she invites In-jae to dinner to celebrate their recent marriages. In-jae readily accepts. Yoona arrives with a cake, prompting a sudden realization from In-jae. Seo-yeon smiles enigmatically. That evening, Jeong-won stares at the new ceiling light. His wife tells him about the dinner invitation from Seo-yeon and her husband. Upstairs, In-jae prepares 2 single beds for Jeong-won, knowing they won't share one, and thoughtfully places a doll beside his bed to help him sleep. The next day, at the couple's dinner, the atmosphere is tense. Seo-yeon and her younger husband pointedly allude to their sexual encounters, embarrassing Jeong-won. In-jae, seeing her husband being bullied, defends him. Seo-yeon shows irritation. Back at home, the male lead helps his new wife in the kitchen. They reminisce, and he learns she used to be a dancer. She's hesitant to show him, fearing his reaction. He playfully puts on music, wanting to see her jaw drop. In-jae laughs and invites him to dance. Jeong-won is initially shy, but with his wife's guidance, manages to dance a little. He then kisses her, surprising but not unwelcome. Unbeknownst to them, Seo-yeon watches everything remotely via a hidden camera she installed while changing the ceiling light. The next morning, as usual, the female lead went for her relaxing boat ride. Jeong-won, too, was by the river, but sitting on the bank with Director Oh. He wouldn't let Director Oh fish, though, finding the act of using live bait to catch another living creature cruel. Suddenly, Jeong-won had the thought of sleeping with In-jae. Back at home, In-jae inspected the medication and realized they were mainly antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills, all prescription drugs. It was unusual to have so many different kinds stockpiled. She suspected someone might be hiding an addiction. Meanwhile, Seo-yeon was monitoring the security cameras and noticed In-jae staring at the ceiling light. Jae-oh suddenly entered and gave Seo-yeon a new necklace, noticing she always wore the same old one. However, Seo-yeon was more comfortable with the familiar necklace and didn't want to change it. Jae-oh wondered why she acted differently at Jeong-won's house. Seo-yeon thought about it and concluded it wasn't because of either of them. He asked if she was uncomfortable with In-jae. Seo-yeon explained that the house felt familiar, so she wasn't pretending, it was just habit. Jae-oh chuckled and left, unaware that his wife was still watching the house through the cameras. In-jae was tidying the bookshelf when she came across Jeong-won's college album. She was even more surprised to find a box containing a gun hidden behind the books. Disturbed, she went outside to talk to Seo-jeong about her ex-husband, confessing her growing feelings of suffocation and fear. Later, at the supermarket, she heard Jae-oh call her name. They went to a cafe to talk. In-jae revealed she'd known he was a colleague for a while, having met assistant director Yoon Jae-oh at the company previously. He was surprised she knew. The 2 husbands and 2 wives were a confusing mix of truth and lies. Jae-oh's real reason for meeting In-jae was to propose an alliance. He wanted to take things further with Seo-yeon, motivated by either her money, her looks, or her attractive body. In-jae asked if Seo-yeon often used sleeping pills, but before she got an answer, she received a text from Jeong-won inviting her to dinner. As she was about to leave, Jae-oh reminded her they were on the same side now, encouraging them to work together. At the hospital for dinner, Jeong-won explained that they always had seaweed soup at his house. He initially thought his father loved it, but later realized that after he was born, his mother never had proper seaweed soup. One day, his mother was severely beaten and had to cook it herself in the kitchen, eating in the dark. In-jae impulsively took Jeong-won's hand to comfort him, surprising him. She proposed they do it together. She could kill his father, and he could kill her mother. It turned out that the destruction of her marriage to her ex-husband, Do-ha, was caused by her mother's online post, not her father. Back at home, they folded laundry together. In-jae was surprised at Jeong-won's domestic skills. He explained that he'd lived alone for about 10 years during school. He hadn't changed the furniture in the house, just cleaned and arranged it. Jeong-won asked why she wanted his mother dead. In-jae didn't hesitate to say that she had ruined her marriage and killed her ex-husband. The next morning, In-jae returned by boat to meet her colleague's younger sister, In-young. In-young was pregnant, but her new husband didn't want to keep the baby. If she gave birth without a father, the company would have to pay an exorbitant sum. However, In-young had learned from her doctor that her uterus was naturally weak, making it difficult for her to conceive. Therefore, she wanted to keep the baby this time and asked In-jae for help. In return, she would provide information about her ex-husband. Meanwhile, Jeong-won was anxious in the office of the company Seo-yeon had just built. He had texted In-jae asking her to see a movie and was unsure if she would agree. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a reply, and Jeong-won smiled brightly at her acceptance. Seo-yeon appeared, curious about the reason for his joy. When Jeong-won wouldn't tell her, she invited him to dinner. He declined, explaining he already had plans for the evening and suggested they reschedule for the following day. It seemed Jeong-won was becoming more comfortable being himself now that he was separated from his ex-wife, Seo-yeon. At the cinema, Jeong-won rushed to buy tickets, leaving them with only the option of a horror film. In-jae, surprisingly, enjoyed it, while Jeong-won couldn't bear to watch. He spent the entire movie covering his ears and staring at his new wife. In-jae, aware of his fear, simply chuckled. Meanwhile, Seo-yeon, noticing their late return, repeatedly called Jeong-won, who ignored her calls. Unbeknownst to him, she had cameras not only in the ceiling lights, but also hidden throughout his house. After the movie, they walked home. In-jae expressed her happiness that he had invited her and her enjoyment of the film. She then revealed that the person her mother had supposedly killed might soon be coming after her. Upon hearing this, Jeong-won suddenly felt a desire to sleep with In-jae. He wished he could express himself more eloquently, but that felt too artificial. He could have kept his feelings hidden, but he refrained, fearing it would be futile. Jeong-won constantly tried to simplify his life, but In-jae was an exception. He wasn't sure if it was because she was a woman or simply because he liked her and wanted to be intimate. Back home, they slept in separate beds, both restless. Seo-yeon continued calling, while Jeong-won continued to ignore her. Furious, she searched for alcohol, demanding that her younger husband pour her a drink. She needed to feel in control of at least one person. Jo-oh angrily confronted her, questioning whether she even knew who he was or what he had done. His affection for her didn't mean she owned him. Jae-oh, witnessing her despair, poured her a drink, hoping it would be her last. Seo-yeon looked pathetic. Finally, the police identified the victim, Eom Tae-seong, In-jae's ex-husband. It turns out the police investigation into the case, spanning many days in their search for the perpetrator, all takes place in the future. The police uncover the victim's extensive criminal history, revealing a disturbing pattern of stalking charges for which he received reduced sentences. Prior to this, he had been fined and imprisoned 7 times. When the inspector learns that this individual stalked In-jae, Jeong-won's wife, he becomes deeply concerned and immediately instructs his subordinates to contact and obtain their address. Back in the present, Seo-yeon attends a calming tea gathering, unexpectedly finding In-jae also invited by the teacher. Seo-yeon wonders if they were together the previous night, as she couldn't reach Jeong-won. In-jae explains they went to a movie and Jeong-won likely had his phone on silent. They discuss the mugwort tea they're enjoying, and Seo-yeon mentions raspberry tea, suggesting it would suit In-jae as well. It's unclear whether she has an ulterior motive, or if she's subtly hinting about the cameras she's installed throughout In-jae's home. After the tea tasting, as In-jae drives home, Seo-yeon suddenly speeds past, causing In-jae to slam on the brakes and crash into a wall, damaging her car. Seo-yeon offers In-jae a ride home. Alone in the car, Seo-yeon brings up their temporary marriage, emphasizing that she chose In-jae. However, people at her company claimed they wouldn't be compatible, leading Seo-yeon to initially give up. She expresses happiness that In-jae accepted the marriage proposal. Back at home, In-jae watches soccer, but Seo-yeon's words linger in her mind. Gradually, she experiences the same fear and paranoia as Jeong-won, making it impossible to sleep. She returns to their bedroom to find Jeong-won also awake. In-jae suddenly kisses him, taking Jeong-won by surprise. Finally, they are ready to be intimate with each other. Because In-jae had a nightmare, Jeong-won stayed by her side, holding her hand to help her sleep. Suddenly, a notification popped up on her phone. Out of curiosity, Jeong-won picked it up and read the message. "I saw Eom Tae-seong near your house. Need me to bring the air pistol or something?" A while later, In-jae woke up. Jeong-won pointed to a nightlight, a gift from his mother when he was little, meant to ward off nightmares. He asked if she'd had a bad dream, what she'd dreamt. In-jae said she couldn't remember, adding that who remembers their dreams anyway. Jeong-won simply stated that people are born of water, so it wasn't that they were dying, but rather resting. Thanks to his mother's gift, he'd slept well for a while, but ever since she passed away, he'd been having strange nightmares. Once, he dreamt he melted like ice in a crowded street, screaming, but no one could hear him. He just died alone like that. In-jae responded, "So what if you die alone? Isn't that a peaceful way to go to heaven?" She added that everyone tries to forget about loneliness because they're afraid, but once you accept it, it's not a big deal. Getting to the point, Jeong-won directly asked if Tae-seong was in her dream. Who was he? Was he dangerous enough that she needed an air pistol? In-jae revealed that Tae-seong was a stalker who'd been following her for 5 years. He might even be watching them outside the house right then. Jeong-won, worried, asked what she planned to do, but she said Tae-seong was her problem, unrelated to their marriage, so he shouldn't worry about it. Elsewhere, Seo-yeon had her first meeting with a client. Eom Tae-seong introduced himself. Noticing that Seo-yeon seemed to be staring at his mud-stained sneakers, he addressed it directly, explaining that he used to wear them in prison and, finding them comfortable, still wore them occasionally. Seo-yeon replied that she wasn't interested in other people's private lives. Tae-seong countered, "You are interested in No In-jae's private life, that bitch." He continued, "I don't hate bitches like you, but don't touch No In-jae. If you want to know who I am, ask her. And while you're at it, ask her what happens when you piss me off." After this dramatic warning, he casually switched back to discussing the contract. Returning home, In-jae stumbled upon a record left by Jeong-won's ex-wife, along with a picture of a fetus and some pills. She didn't seem concerned, only scoffing. Later, she met with her close friend, their bond strong enough that the friend would likely deal with Tae-seong if he caused trouble. In-jae, however, insisted that if anyone was going to kill him, it would be her. She asked her friend, Si-jeong, why she didn't find someone to lean on. Si-jeong explained she'd calculated the high risk of unhappiness and preferred her peaceful life. When asked why she cared so much about In-jae, Si-jeong simply said they used to have 3 friends, and now there were only 2 of them left, so caring was natural. In-jae then asked Si-jeong to investigate Jeong-won's ex-wife and find out where she got the pills, suspecting her of being a manipulative schemer. The next day, Seo-yeon was chatting with a friend when she suddenly experienced severe abdominal pain. When she woke up, In-jae was by her side. Ironically, her friend had called the very person Seo-yeon considered her rival. In-jae told her that she'd almost needed a hysterectomy. Apparently, Seo-yeon's ood, combined with excessive exercise, had caused an infection. During their conversation, Seo-yeon asked if In-jae had slept with Jeong-won yet. Shockingly, Seo-yeon revealed she'd placed a camera in their bedroom to watch them. Disgusted, In-jae immediately called the nurse and left. Outside, Jeong-won was listening to music, thinking of In-jae dancing seductively, when a friend came to see him. Afterward, Jeong-won visited his ex-wife in the hospital. Seeing him, Seo-yeon recounted her medical woes, mentioning her now diminished chances of getting pregnant. She flashed back to a difficult childbirth where Jeong-won, as her guardian, chose to save the baby over her. This had fueled her hatred for him, and she'd cursed him never to have children. Back at home, Jeong-won saw a man outside his door. His intuition told him this was the man In-jae had mentioned, so he invited him in for tea. He told In-jae he wanted to bring the darkness into the light. She reiterated that once you accept it, it's not a big deal. After chatting and inquiring about each other's work, Jeong-won invited the man outside for a smoke. In-jae went inside to get her gun, just in case. Jeong-won boasted of his wealth and power, claiming he could ruin anyone's life with money. Yet, he still sought out Tae-seong for a face-to-face confrontation. He explicitly warned Tae-seong to stay away from No In-jae. Unfazed, Tae-seong taunted Jeong-won about his past, bringing up an incident where Jeong-won had cursed at his mother and questioning whether In-jae knew about it. Enraged, Jeong-won grabbed Tae-seong by the throat. Meanwhile, two detectives conversed by a frozen river. They speculated that the frequent fireworks in the area might have masked any sounds of a struggle. The heavy rain earlier that morning had washed away any potential evidence. When In-jae arrived home, Tae-seong had already left. Seeing Jeong-won's distress, she embraced him. He then confided in her about his failed marriage, revealing that Seo-yeon, his ex-wife, hadn't wanted children. One day, he witnessed Seo-yeon, pregnant and seemingly distraught, walking down the street when she was struck by a car. Jeong-won could only watch in horror. He confessed his desire to escape that nightmare, to be free from Seo-yeon, and his only hope at the time was for his child to survive. In-jae, in turn, recounted how Tae-seong had previously broken the neck of one of Jeong-won's former bodyguards, often ex-special forces personnel. She explained that Tae-seong was a greater threat to those around her than to Jeong-won himself. Tae-seong was trying to possess her in every way possible to control In-jae. Simultaneously, at the hospital, Seo-yeon was scheming to get Tae-seong imprisoned. However, doing so would expose Jeong-won's existence to the world, making it an impossible solution. The only alternative was for Seo-yeon to learn self-defense to protect herself against Tae-seong. Frustrated, Seo-yeon confronted her father-in-law, venting her anger. He dismissed her marriage as useless to the company and continually obstructed her. Unexpectedly, during their argument, her father-in-law briefly regained consciousness after she inadvertently made physical contact, leaving her shaken. Later, Jeong-won visited the hospital to check on his father. It was the first time he had looked into his father's eyes for so long. However, the recovery proved to be temporary. Finally, the day arrived when Jeong-won, dressed in a black suit, stood before his father's coffin. He had long awaited this day. Seo-yeon attended the funeral dressed in mourning attire, presenting herself as Jeong-won's ex-wife. She offered him 3 pills, commonly used in American hospitals, suggesting he try them if his current medication wasn't effective. Shortly after, In-jae arrived and helped Jeong-won with his tie, despite the company discouraging her presence at such important events. Jeong-won insisted that he needed her by his side. Then, Seo-yeon approached, adding fuel to the fire by reminding him that only she had ever truly cared for him. Jeong-won merely touched his tie, perhaps finding solace in the warmth In-jae's presence brought to his long frozen heart. In-jae later confronted Seo-yeon, pointing out that Seo-yeon was at fault regarding the pregnancy yet continued to blame Jeong-won. Seo-yeon, enraged, attempted a confrontation, but In-jae, skilled in self-defense, easily deflected her aggression. In-jae declared her intention to make their marriage work and help Jeong-won live a better life. Later, dressed in mourning clothes, In-jae sat beside Jeong-won, who took her hand. It was clear that she was the one he needed most. On the drive home, Seo-yeon confided in her new husband, lamenting her tendency to always have to choose. If she disliked a teacher, she would change classes. She always maneuvered to sit next to the friend she preferred. Because of this, she had often been labeled a bitch. Seo-yeon angrily questioned why everything revolved around In-jae. In-jae was supposed to be a mere stand-in for a year, yet now Seo-yeon found herself out of Jeong-won's life. Returning late to the funeral, they found no other visitors. Since In-jae had the day off, Jeong-won suggested they do something enjoyable. They immediately got ready for a road trip, watched a movie, and happily shopped together, a strange juxtaposition of grief and joy. In-jae mused that not every father deserved tears at their funeral, referencing her own mother, who had publicly ruined her brother's life, shattering their family. Jeong-won empathized with her family situation. He then asked her what would happen if one day he didn't want to let her go. As his father's ashes were scattered, In-jae received intel on where Seo-yeon had obtained the pills. After the funeral, Seo-yeon directly demanded In-jae divorce Jeong-won. She declared his punishment over and informed In-jae that both would receive financial compensation after the divorce. The next day, Seo-yeon went to buy a suitcase, the same one from the beginning of the film, to pack her belongings. In-jae arrived later and also picked up an identical one. So, who was the one who threw the suitcase into the river? Back at home, Jeong-won, feeling helpless, took out the DVD his ex-wife left him, picked up 3 blue pills, and then put them back. He sat next to In-jae's bed. She asked him if he was restless because of what Seo Yeon had said. Jeong-won replied that she often kicked off the blankets in her sleep, and that there should be at least one person in the house who sleeps soundly and dreams sweet dreams. In-jae gestured towards the space beside her, saying it would be better if both of them slept well. Jeong-won imagined waking up one morning to find they'd both aged 20 years, finding each other predictable and boring. They'd become too familiar with each other's friends, clinging to each other all day until they were sick of each other. They'd grill fish, fall asleep, and wake up to the same predictable day, bored to death. He asked if this was the legendary peaceful yet happy life. Suddenly, Jeong-won pressed a pillow over In-jae's face. Thankfully, it was just a dream. When he woke up, In-jae was gone. He wondered why he had such a disturbing thought. By the river, In-jae met her friend, who was 5 months pregnant. Learning that her husband still hadn't changed his mind, In-jae gave her a large sum of money to prepare for the birth and raising of the child, reminding her there were many things to prepare for. In-jae told her to find a room, even a small one, somewhere her husband couldn't find her. Upon returning home, she received a video of a stranger entering her house and doing something to her fish tank. She immediately returned to her old house. Her friend said someone had been sneaking into the house every night to mess with the fish, and the video proved it. For some reason, In-jae suspected Jeong-won. Jeong-won, sleeping in his car, also had a nightmare. Suddenly, Tae-seong asked to meet him. While eating grilled meat, Tae-seong talked about the pervert In-jae almost married. She had registered her permanent address at his house. The jerk had disappeared 5 years ago, but she still stayed there. In-jae had also discovered hidden cameras in his house. Tae-seong continued, saying that whenever In-jae and her partner went out, everyone would stare. He lamented having to witness the collapse of her life. A week before the wedding, several photos were leaked online, blurred images of 2 men entangled. The man disappeared, leaving In-jae to deal with the consequences. That damn corporation sent their legal team and forced her to sign a non-disclosure agreement, afraid of damaging their reputation. The incident caused In-jae to withdraw from the public eye. She was an orphan, cut off from family, and suppressed her emotions. She was too resilient, and that was precisely why he admired her. Meanwhile, Seo Yeon called off her engagement with her new fiancé. Jeong-won didn't understand why she had pushed him into this marriage, cut ties with him, and now wanted him back. Seo Yeon saw it as a game. Breaking the contract meant paying a penalty, nothing serious. She reminded him to take his medication. Jeong-won questioned whether Seo Yeon solved everything with pills. She didn't bother explaining, just demanding he resolve things with In-jae so they could return to how things were. In-jae also went to see the new fiancé. He informed his wife that In-jae had visited. Sensing something, Seo Yeon rushed home. While Seo Yeon was urging her driver, the fiancé showed In-jae his wife's important room. Entering, In-jae was stunned to see cameras all over Jeong-won's house. Even more surprising, he was meticulously preparing dinner for 2. When Seo Yeon scolded her fiancé for not answering her calls, he claimed he was showering. No, In-jae had already left. He said they had only discussed canceling the contract. In-jae returned home to have dinner with her husband. Seo Yeon sat smugly, watching the family drama she had orchestrated. Jeong-won asked In-jae where she had been. She said she had visited her old house and was scared because she knew it was filled with cameras. To comfort her, he watched a movie with her that night. Just then, she received a message about the person supplying the medication. Seo Yeon saw a text from her ex-husband asking to meet to get the medication. She was overjoyed, thinking she had regained control over Jeong-won. However, when she arrived, it was In-jae standing before her. Furious, she demanded to know if In-jae had used his phone to trick her. In-jae simply wanted to know why Seo Yeon was doing this. The 2 women bickered, each claiming to understand Jeong-won better. Seo Yeon reminded In-jae that they were getting divorced. But divorce wouldn't be easy. In-jae had researched the contract. Only the couple could decide to divorce. Now, In-jae warned Seo Yeon not to touch Jeong-won. Seo Yeon cruelly brought up In-jae's past trauma, mockingly saying In-jae should have told her mother that long ago, "Don't touch my man." Seo Yeon accused In-jae of bringing misfortune to those around her. In-jae retorted that she was now certain that whether it was 3,000 years ago or now, a wretch like Seo Yeon would never change. As they descended in the construction elevator, In-jae questioned Seo Yeon about giving Jeong-won the medication, comparing it to opium.
Seo Yeon argued that she simply provided it.
She couldn't force him to take it. Her logic was baffling. After a verbal sparring match, the two women physically fought. The elevator became a cage trapping two furious tigresses. Small but mighty, In-jae won the brawl and walked away, leaving Seo Yeon crying in frustration. Seo Yeon returned home and aggressively ate her new husband's food out of spite, only to be pushed away. He was a human being, too. He wasn't her puppet. Jeong-won met his friend and confessed that he had fallen for In-jae. He couldn't explain the complexities of love at their age in a single day. His friend reminded him that a serious relationship with her was impossible. Marriage through MN was the only option. It was like a constitution written on the first page. But Jeong-won had never bothered to read contracts. Back home, the new couple, having weathered recent storms, embraced. They went to a sandwich shop for dinner. Jeong-won confessed he had missed her all day, agonizing over it. In-jae claimed she hadn't missed him quite as much, causing a flicker of sadness across Jeong-won's face. She quickly added that she did miss him, and they kissed. Their sandwich shop date started with a tongue appetizer, leaving Jeong-won shyly eating his main course while In-jae smiled, amused. Hand in hand, they cherished the moment. Later, rowing on the river, In-jae recounted a near-drowning experience from her childhood and the drowning death of her best friend. She couldn't swim. She explained her love for rowing. On the water, she was like an island, inviolable, able to drift freely. In stark contrast to their happiness, Seo Yeon fretted at home. A call from her husband brought a fleeting moment of joy, cut short by Tae-seong's interception. He confronted her about the hidden camera in the lamp, a scene witnessed by Seo Yeon's new husband. Alone in her room, Seo Yeon, knowing her plans were exposed, laughed bitterly. Through some unspoken agreement, Tae-seong met Jeong-won for hot pot. Despite his dislike for Tae-seong, Jeong-won agreed to the meeting upon mention of In-jae. His distaste evident, he offered Tae-seong only tea. Tae-seong revealed that the other man's house had been vacant for 5 years, yet In-jae maintained it meticulously, unchanged. He questioned why Jeong-won thought In-jae chose him, attempting to sow discord. Jeong-won remained indifferent. Tae-seong mentioned In-jae's first and fourth contract husbands, both terminally ill, one with a homosexual illness, marrying only to appease their families, the other uninterested. He insinuated, jokingly, that perhaps Jeong-won shared a similar impotence. His real point was that he planned to disappear with In-jae. Elsewhere, two police officers reminisced about their first encounter with Jeong-won, around age 17, after his mother's suicide and his subsequent descent into addiction. The newspapers were filled with a story: the Keeball heir arrested for drug use. He'd used synthetic cannabis in pill form, blue pills. The officers harbored suspicions but lacked evidence. At the old house, In-jae arrived to clean and found the photo of her and her contract husband turned face down. Unable to reach her, Jeong-won rushed to the house. Earlier, Tae-seong, unable to unlock the door, had angrily vandalized it. When the door finally opened, a man stabbed him in the leg. This disheveled man was In-jae's contract husband, missing for 5 years. Returning to find blood on the floor, In-jae was terrified. The door was still ajar. She prayed there was nothing sinister inside. Recalling her best friend So Hae-young's funeral, which In-jae had overseen because the girl had no family, In-jae had unknowingly passed Jeong-won. Their second encounter was on a bus. At the graduation ceremony, a grief-stricken Jeong-won, wearing tattered slippers, shuffled to have his picture taken. In-jae gave him a new pair of flip-flops. Seeing the white flower hairpin in her hair, he asked if someone in her family had died. In-jae spoke of her recently deceased friend, explaining that she had no relatives, so In-jae had organized the funeral. In-jae felt she'd grieved deeply for her friend. Jeong-won's eyes brightened. He revealed his mother had recently passed away, mirroring In-jae's experience of profound grief. Jeong-won suggested In-jae wasn't responsible for her friend's death. She looked down at the name Han Jeong-won. It was the first time she felt understood by a stranger, their first real connection. Back in the present, In-jae entered her house. Everything was the same, but he wasn't there, only a small, blood-stained knife. A frantic knocking came at the door. Jeong-won rushed in, searching. In-jae insisted she wasn't hurt. She'd just been washing her hands. She told him to leave, it wasn't his concern. Jeong-won countered. But we're married, shouldn't I care for my wife? In-jae replied. We're not that special. You're still selfish and immature. Grilling fish and cooking for you every morning is normal, to give you a regular life. Don't overstep. Jeong-won challenged. This perfect marriage will make you proud, right? In-jae felt trapped in the house, unable to leave, but saving others lessened her guilt. She argued, you're in this arrogant marriage too, so you have no reason to be here. She forcefully chased him away with harsh words. Jeong-won pointed out, this isn't even your house. You're clinging to an empty shell. In the end, In-jae, hiding in that shell, drove him away. Tae-seong, limping with a leg injury, went to a pharmacy for first aid supplies. The pharmacist insisted he go to the emergency room. His pain and aggressive nature led him to call her a bitch and demand medicine. Professional ethics prevented her from selling him anything. It turned out Seo Do-ha, the female lead's former business partner, had held a knife to Tae-seong's throat for snitching. He'd leaked compromising videos and photos to In-jae's mother. Do-ha could easily kill him, but only demanded he stay away from In-jae. Back at the pharmacy, Tae-seong stripped down, revealing his injury and a pile of medication. This terrified the pharmacist, who reached for her phone to call the police. When Do-ha returned home, a neighbor scolded him for leaving without a word, mentioning In-jae was being stalked by Tae-seong, unaware Do-ha had already dealt with him. The husband was worried about In-jae, but when she returned, he angrily slammed the door. In his room, he raged against their absurd marriage contract. The next day, In-jae visited her pregnant friend. Seeing the baby supplies, the friend happily said she could eat strawberries freely now. Her husband said she could have the baby but wouldn't be involved. This was ideal for her. She explained she'd run her whole life, but now she could put down roots and raise her child well. In-jae shared her recent argument with her husband. Meanwhile, a furious Jeong-won told his friend his new wife was inexplicably rooted to that house, waiting for someone missing for 5 years. Upon receiving an apologetic text from his wife, Jeong-won was relieved. He even installed security cameras, having noticed a handgun in In-jae's closet. At a bar, In-jae was drinking with her best friend. Hearing about her ex-husband's return, her friend was furious. She considered In-jae and her deceased friend as family. In short, her friend is In-jae's only remaining relative. After her failed marriage, there's no reason for In-jae to pursue another relationship. Her friend reminded In-jae of her previous zombie-like state and her reckless dive into a relationship with Jeong-won, pointing out that people in love aren't always rational. In-jae promised their contract would end everything. Whether she could keep that promise remained to be seen. At home, the husband was reheating food when his ex-wife arrived. Of course, drama followed. Seo-yeon confessed her hatred for the flip-flops, admitting she'd manipulated In-jae into marrying Jeong-won, but secretly resented it. She urged him to quickly end the contract so they could be together again, as if their separation never happened. On the way home, Seo-yeon and In-jae argued again. Back at Jeong-won's house, he found In-jae watching soccer and, despite claiming disinterest, subtly sat down to watch with her. In-jae apologized for yelling at him. Jeong-won playfully teased her, then asked, "If this marriage ends, will you return to your former partner?" He wondered if she was eagerly anticipating that moment. In-jae countered by asking if he'd return to Seo-yeon. The atmosphere became tense. At Seo-yeon's house, her new husband tried to counsel her. They both knew they hurt each other but wouldn't admit it. Despite his advice, she remained determined to return to her ex-husband. Seeing her stubbornness, Seo-yeon said, "Come here," but he didn't respond. She repeated, "Come here," and he eventually sat closer, and they ate porridge together, engaging in intimate gestures typical of couples. In-jae received a message from Do-ha asking to meet. She returned to their old house and prepared a meal for Do-ha's favorite soybean paste soup. In-jae chatted as if their separation never happened. Do-ha urged her to stop. Everything had gone wrong from the start, not because of her mother, but because of In-jae's greed, which changed him. As Do-ha boarded a plane, he considered himself a monster, terrified of seeing her again. In-jae confessed that every day was hell, but she endured it alone. She'd wished he would return so they could be together as if nothing happened. Time had passed, and she'd longed for his return to end their nameless relationship. She lacked the courage to end it herself. she angrily reproached him, and Du had apologized for delaying the inevitable end. On her way home, In-jae recalled past memories of their happy life together cooking, keeping fish. As she daydreamed about her ex, her current husband texted, expressing his concern. Jeong-won was waiting for her at the bus stop. In-jae didn't speak, but tears streamed down her face. Seeing her cry, Jeong-won assumed he'd done something wrong. Back home, sitting opposite each other, Jeong-won asked why she was crying. In-jae wasn't sure. Perhaps she was happy to see him. Jeong-won jokingly wondered if crying tears of joy at seeing him made her a weirdo. He was pleased by her tears. One person cried, and two were happy. That evening, Jeong-won inquired about her preferences: food, music. In-jae said she would attend his performance. Meanwhile, In-jae's friend now had a family, a husband and twin boys. Despite the financial burdens, her husband suddenly started crying, lamenting the passage of time. His son's toenails had gone from soft to hard. They were growing up so fast, approaching adolescence and slamming doors in his face. The thought made him want to cry. He wept openly, and his wife comforted their large child. He nestled into his wife's lap, acting childish. Marriage was challenging but filled with joy. The scene shifts to the pharmacy, surrounded by police. The pharmacist's neck was cleanly broken, without a drop of blood. The other person had taken all the security cameras. A sign announced the owner's departure for study abroad. The bodies had started to decompose. The Min Company discovered Tae-seong was constantly following Jeong-won, visiting strange places. They decided to keep an eye on him. At In-jae's house, she was getting dressed when her husband's phone rang. Curiously, she answered. It was Tae-seong. The two arranged to meet and clear things up. In-jae seemed wary. She checked the security cameras in the cafe before approaching him. She asked, "Stalking, harassing, and following me, did that make you happy?" He didn't answer but asked if her marriage contract was in the suitcase. He'd gone to the house to find it but was stabbed in the thigh. Because of that man, Tae-seong had killed an innocent person. He questioned why In-jae hated him. In-jae, tired of his face, demanded he stop. Feeling remorseful, Tae-seong had followed her to find out why. He claimed she'd hated him from the start, even though he'd done nothing wrong, questioning the injustice. He wondered if hurting Jeong-won would get In-jae's attention. She simply told him not to harm Jeong-won and left. He grabbed her hand. Just then, Jeong-won arrived, teaching Tae-seong a lesson in manners. Tae-seong didn't resist the beating. He laughed maniacally. Seeing Jeong-won's violent outburst, In-jae intervened, making him stop. Afterward, Tae-seong went to a shooting range, venting his anger on inanimate targets, his rapid firing alarming the owner. Jeong-won simply asked if the owner had ever wanted to kill someone. Of course, he had. The next day, In-jae informed her supervisor that she would resign after her marriage to Jeong-won ended. Despite his attempts to dissuade her, she was resolute. The supervisor then spoke to In-jae's neighbor, who observed that while matchmaking pairs couples, the relationship required effort from both sides to thrive. Therefore, they either end up hating each other or genuinely develop feelings. Without love, maintaining a relationship is difficult, making it hard for even a married couple to suppress their emotions. Even a fake marriage can spark real feelings. The intelligent supervisor realized In-jae was resigning because she'd developed genuine feelings for her client. The scene shifts to In-jae peacefully rowing a boat alone on a river. Jeong-won returned home but found her missing. He received a call from Supervisor Kim, who revealed security footage showed a camera hidden in the chandelier. Jeong-won stared at it, dumbfounded. Seo-yeon's new husband immediately informed her. She rushed back. Jeong-won went to his ex-wife's house to check the camera, his heart aching as he saw her silently weeping. At the police station, In-jae faced accusations. The police showed photos of Tae-seong with numerous pictures of In-jae. They questioned why she hadn't reported the stalking. In-jae replied she had, but nothing was done unless someone died. The police presented crime scene photos from the pharmacy showing Tae-seong's fingerprints. Since he was dead, they needed to catch the other killer. Camera footage showed Tae-seong around her house. The police wondered who had the strongest motive to kill him. They asked In-jae's whereabouts that day. She recalled herself holding a handgun, squeezing the trigger. At home, the male lead directly throws down the chandelier. He hated it because his father had used it to mount a camera to spy on his mother and him. Now, his ex-wife had installed it to monitor his movements. He saw himself in young Jeong-won, helpless in his family situation. His mother was pressured by his father to the point of suicide. She was injured in one arm, struggling with a rope. Jeong-won had helped his mother hang the rope, allowing her to escape her painful life. Running and crying in the rain, a girl comforted him, Seo-yeon. This is why he wanted to hold on to this relationship. Back in the present, Seo-yeon enters the house. She confesses to secretly installing the camera, adding, "Couldn't I even get a glimpse of you?" Even though he was with In-jae, she still wanted to see Jeong-won's longing in his eyes. Now, she just wanted to return to a peaceful life with her husband. Jeong-won says that he saw her running into the street that day, feeling both anger towards his wife and pity for the child. Seo-yeon explains that after becoming pregnant, every day felt like hell. She felt like the most useless person in the world. In contrast, Jeong-won's excitement felt like it gave him a new reason to live. She felt like she was discarded like a gift-wrapped baby. However, the male lead was unaware of this. He reproached his wife for not speaking up, resulting in their divorce. She explains she made mistakes as a first-time mother. Jeong-won apologizes for not realizing it sooner. She thinks they're accomplices. She aborted a child. Jeong-won aborted his mother, so they should suffer together. The male lead says he'll take the punishment, but not beside her, and leaves. Again, he walks in the rain. This time, In-jae comes to comfort him. They heal their hearts by traveling. He asks about the hidden camera. In-jae says she pulled her hair and hit her a little. She almost aborted the baby herself. Learning about the source of the blue pills, In-jae asks who he would side with if his two wives fought. Jeong-won says nothing, kisses In-jae, and laughs when recalling how she hit his ex-wife. That night, lying together, he tells her he recognized her from the beginning, a difficult time for him when it felt like only In-jae understood him. He wonders what it would have been like if they'd met earlier. He admits their relationship may not last, but even if they crossed paths 100 times, he'd still recognize her. Jeong-won says he loves her and wants to be with her forever. In-jae silently gets up and leaves, seemingly understanding the unfairness of their situation. She asks for a divorce. Jeong-won asks what he did wrong. In-jae says he crossed a line. Ending things is best for both of them. That afternoon, In-jae is on a small boat drifting on the water, contemplating her special time with him, caught between clinging to their nameless love or setting herself free. She gives her rowing equipment to a nearby boat owner, says a final goodbye, and leaves. She disappears. Jeong-won goes to their old house, breaking the door down, angering the landlady. She invites him in. The house is clean. In-jae left without a word. Watching him leave, the landlady remarks that their love story was beautiful. The male lead moves, unaware that Tae-seong is among those he hired. He carries In-jae's suitcase somewhere. Jeong-won goes to the boat owner by the river to ask about In-jae's whereabouts. Then he receives a compensation call from the MN company. He says he has no such intention. He only demands the company ensure In-jae's safety. He tries to get her contact information, but the company refuses. Immediately afterward, In-jae asks the security chief to protect her ex-husband. The chief finds it strange. Even though their contract has expired, they both try their best to protect each other. The chief, having experienced a failed marriage, doesn't believe in love, saying marriage is purer as a business transaction. Back home, In-jae receives a call from Tae-seong. He demands she open the suitcase or he'll kill Jeong-won. Though stubborn, the mention of her lover makes her fall into his trap. Seo-yeon repeatedly tries to commit suicide by taking pills, rescued each time by her new husband, who then hands her over to Jeong-won. She desperately wants to return to her old relationship, despite everyone's warnings. This angers Jeong-won. He slams his hand on the table, declaring their relationship is over. That night, In-jae calls a close friend, expressing a desire for freedom. She then meets Tae-seong in a deserted field, revealing the suitcase password. He informs Jeong-won of their meeting. After unlocking it, In-jae discovers it's Seo-yeon's suitcase, stalling by claiming the force damaged it. Tae-seong notices her nervousness. Enraged, he throws the suitcase away. Seeing his frenzy, In-jae suggests they go to heaven together to end their entanglement. He announces they won't die today because Jeong-won has arrived. Tae-seong holds a knife to In-jae's throat to threaten Jeong-won. In-jae shoots Tae-seong with a small pistol to protect her lover. She's about to shoot herself when Jeong-won stops her, holding her. In the car, he almost takes her hand but hesitates. He reveals he used blanks, preventing a murder charge. Rejecting his protection, she wants to end their relationship. Back at the interrogation, the police learn the bullets were blanks fired in self-defense, but she's still fined for illegal weapons possession. She wonders who really killed Ti-seong. That night, Ti-seong, suitcase in hand, tries to escape by boat, but a man stops him. The man challenges Ti-seong to a duel, fatally stabbing him. Both Ti-seong and the suitcase fall into the river. So, there's an explanation for the suitcase ending up in the river at the beginning of the episode. It turns out the security chief had Seo-yeon's new husband kill Ti-seong to ensure everyone's safety. Later, Seo-yeon admits her ex-husband was right. That marriage was actually a good fit for her. Seeing the sharp sword on the shelf, she asks why. Her husband explains he just took a life. He was supposed to protect the male lead NM, but ran away when Ti-seong killed his colleague. This haunted him, creating lifelong turmoil, but now he's resolved it. Back at the police station, the detective questions Seo-yeon about the stab wound on the victim's chest. Mentioning it was a smooth, sharp object, she realizes what happened, but pretends indifference. After the interrogation, the police ask her to check the suitcase. Seeing baby items inside, Seo-yeon cries, reliving past sorrows. Meanwhile, In-jae visits her old landlady, then returns home, leaving behind a ring and packing her suitcase to leave. Hearing Jeong-won say he doesn't want to move and argue with the landlord, In-jae grabs a sledgehammer and, after some persuasion, they use it to demolish the house filled with unpleasant memories. They sit and talk. Jeong-won presents evidence showing the invisible thread that connected them, receiving In-jae's thanks. The house is destroyed. Seo-yeon learns her new husband was arrested for murder. She schedules a meeting with him, announcing she'll extend her contract with Jae-oh and hire the best lawyer to get him out. Jeong-won says he thought his ex-wife was clinging to him, but it was actually her husband. He owes her an explanation about why they separated. Seo-yeon calls herself the bad guy to avoid more pain and leaves. The male lead returns to a peaceful life with his 2 children, cooking daily. In-jae's life runs parallel cooking and self-care, but in her own home, living a carefree life with her dog. One day, she watches her favorite horror movie, which Jeong-won scored. He knew she'd eventually watch a horror film, knowing her strong personality. By the river, Jeong-won receives a call, the film's release day. The audience reaction is lukewarm. Nobody goes to theaters for horror movies anymore. Back at his friend's house, taking care of the 4-person family has exhausted her, making her feel burnt out. She asks her husband for a divorce. He initially thinks she's joking, but she explains she has a name, a company, but she's just his wife and the mother of their children. She's lost herself while caring for everyone. Of her friends, she's the only one married. Her single friends live happily, while she has nothing. She understands she needs to take care of her children, but it doesn't bring her joy. Understanding her, he tells her to see a dermatologist, uses the latest treatments, gives her a credit card to shop freely. In-jae sells her expensive suitcase and buys a coffee. Exiting, she sees her ex-husband. She's stunned. The world is round, they separated, and now they meet again. Is their fate still intertwined? On a romantic, leaf-strewn street, Jeong-won approaches, saying he's at the nearby veterinary clinic because his cat broke a claw. He asks about her health. She praises the horror movie, admitting it was scary. He asks if she saw the end credits. She says she was waiting for them. He asks if this is their first chance encounter. She agrees. Is there another?